Have you ever met someone who believed they knew everything, only to discover that a single moment could prove them completely wrong? Many centuries ago, in a small riverside kingdom, there lived a young scholar named Adrian. He was known throughout the region for his remarkable education. He had studied philosophy, mathematics, astronomy, literature, and history at the finest academies. People admired his intelligence, but they also whispered about something else: his pride. Adrian believed that knowledge found in books was superior to all other forms of wisdom. Whenever he met farmers, craftsmen, fishermen, or laborers, he often looked down on them. In his mind, education was the true measure of a person's worth. One autumn morning, Adrian needed to travel across a wide river to reach a neighboring city where he had been invited to speak at a gathering of scholars. The only way across was by a wooden ferry operated by an elderly boatman named Thomas. Thomas was a simple man with gray hair, weathered skin, and rough hands shaped by decades of rowing boats. He had never attended a university and could barely read, yet his calm eyes carried a quiet confidence that came from years of experience. As the ferry slowly drifted away from the shore, Adrian noticed the old man's appearance and immediately judged him. "Tell me, boatman," Adrian asked with a smug smile, "have you ever studied philosophy?" Thomas shook his head politely. "No, sir. I have spent my life on this river." Adrian laughed softly. "Then you've wasted a quarter of your life." The old man simply smiled and continued rowing. After a few minutes, Adrian spoke again. "Have you studied mathematics? Geometry? Astronomy?" "No, sir," Thomas replied calmly. Adrian shook his head in disappointment. "Then you've wasted half your life." Several passengers exchanged uncomfortable glances, but Thomas remained silent. The river stretched endlessly before them. Gentle waves reflected the morning sunlight, and distant birds circled overhead. Not satisfied, Adrian continued. "Surely you've read the great historians and poets?" "I'm afraid not," said Thomas. The scholar smirked. "Then you've wasted 3/4 of your life." Still, the old boatman showed no anger. Instead, he focused on steering the vessel safely through the current. As they reached the middle of the river, the weather suddenly changed. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon. The wind began to howl. The peaceful water transformed into violent waves. Passengers grabbed the sides of the ferry in fear as thunder echoed across the sky. Within minutes, a powerful storm surrounded them. Rain crashed down relentlessly. The ferry rocked violently from side to side. For the first time that day, Adrian's confidence began to fade. Thomas quickly secured the ropes and instructed everyone to remain calm. A massive wave slammed against the ferry. Water flooded onto the deck. Panic spread among the passengers. The old boatman worked tirelessly, using every ounce of experience he had gained during decades on the river. Then Thomas turned toward Adrian and asked a simple question. "Sir, have you ever learned how to swim?" Adrian's face turned pale. "No," he admitted. The old man looked at him with neither mockery nor anger. "Then, my friend, if this boat sinks, you may lose all of your life." The words struck Adrian harder than the storm itself. At that moment, he realized a truth he had never learned from books. All his education could explain the movement of stars, the theories of philosophers, and the equations of mathematicians. But none of it could help him survive the raging river. Meanwhile, the skill of a humble boatman, learned through years of practical experience, had become the most valuable knowledge on the water. For nearly an hour, Thomas battled the storm. Using his understanding of currents, winds, and river behavior, he carefully guided the ferry toward a sheltered section of shoreline. Eventually, the storm weakened. The waves settled. The rain stopped. The passengers stepped onto solid ground with overwhelming relief. Adrian stood silently on the riverbank, staring at the old boatman. For the first time in many years, he felt ashamed. He approached Thomas and bowed his head. "Forgive me," he said sincerely. "Today I learned more from you than from many of my teachers." Thomas smiled warmly. "There are many kinds of knowledge, young man. Books teach us many things, but life teaches us how to use them." From that day forward, Adrian remained a scholar, but he was no longer arrogant. He listened to ordinary people, respected practical skills, and understood that wisdom can be found anywhere. Because true intelligence is not measured by how much we know. It is measured by how willing we are to keep learning. And sometimes, the most important lessons come from the people we least expect.